Good morning and welcome to the Ysleta Independent School District's workshop meeting of the Board of Trustees. This workshop of the Board of Trustees is a workshop of the board that the public is allowed to attend. As provided, Ysleta ISD Policy BED, we invite members of the public to make comments during the citizens' input portion at the start of the meeting according to the instructions provided with the electronic posting notice of our meeting. Legally, the board may listen but may not enter into discussion on matters in citizens' input. I would like to remind everyone that this is only a workshop and the items on the agenda were posted for discussion and informational purposes only. The board will take no action during today's workshop. This workshop meeting of the Board of Trustees is called to order at 8:04 a.m. We have a quorum with Shane Haggerty, Chris Hernandez, Charlie Bustillos, Connie Woodruff, and myself, Cruz Ochoa. Trustee Dwyer and Trustee Catherine Lucero are unable to join us and are considered excused. Trustee Bustillos, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Have a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bustillos. Do we have any citizens input this evening?
No, President Ochoa, we don't.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let us proceed with our workshop. Dr. De La Torre, do you have any reports for us this morning?
We do, President Ochoa, members of the board. First, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your weekend, your busy schedule, to spend some time with us this morning. The purpose of the meeting was really just to convene and provide you with information that we're following very closely, and then to talk a little bit about what you can anticipate over the next couple of months relative to the strategic action plan, the district scorecard, and then ultimately the superintendent's evaluation in late January. I'm going to cover the legislative agenda. What we are looking at the moment, obviously the governor has reconvened the legislative session. It's referred to as a special session, and his priority is the adoption of a law that would allow parents to receive an educational savings account. We know it as a voucher. And so what's before the legislators right now is that they've drafted a proposal where school districts across the state would receive an additional $2 billion in funding. For the current year, 22-23, it would increase the basic allotment by about $30 per student and get us to $6,190, and then to $6,500 in the 24-25 school year. It would also require that we redirect some of those additional dollars for teacher retention bonuses. That means teachers would we would be required to spend at least 30 to 50% of the new money that we receive on teacher salaries, and that would include a $4,000 grant to full-time employees subject to our salary schedule, and a $2,000 one-time payment to teachers, counselors, nurses, librarians. In the case of teachers, it would be teachers who are part-time. The other piece of that, of course, would be that if we're willing to take the money, by we I mean school districts throughout the state. They would suspend the A to F accountability, and we'd remain an A-rated, in our case, an A-rated school district for the current year, the 24-25 school year, and the 25-26 school year. And they're hoping, I think, that is an incentive for us to seriously consider the additional money, as well as some relief from the A to F accountability system, but it would come at a cost of the money that they're currently holding hostage, and they'll hold it hostage until we agree to give parents $7,420 to spend for private parochial school, charter school tuition, primarily parochial and private because charter schools are considered public schools. Homeschool students would be eligible for the additional funds. And the one thing that was added recently that's interesting is that it would automatically sunset in 2027. In other words, what they're hoping to do is do a trial run where they give these vouchers out, but they do have a sunset date where they would revisit the concept in September of 2027. Now, the vouchers would also be limited to, I believe, 25,000 students the first year, and then they would add an additional 25,000 students the second year. What they haven't determined and what they haven't defined for us is what would be on what basis would a student be eligible for the voucher or not eligible for the voucher? Are we talking about students who are economically disadvantaged, who qualify for free and or reduced lunch? Are we talking about students who have special needs? Are we talking about students who are emerging bilingual students? So they haven't quite, I think, defined who would be eligible for the voucher. So there would be 25,000 students year one, an additional 25,000 students year two, and then in year three is when it would sunset, and I guess they would evaluate whether or not it's having the intended impact and outcome.
Yes, I was just wondering, that's 25,000 across the state of Texas. So there's not that, that's a very low percentage.
Yes. Yes. Most of, well, obviously the teachers union at the state level is opposed to it. They're not interested in negotiating for vouchers. Most superintendents are opposed to it. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. What I'd like to see is that $6,500 per student allocation. Why wouldn't it be the same as the allocation that they're proposing that we give to these 25,000, then 50,000 students? Why isn't it $7,140 for all students? And the only thing I can arrive at is that maybe the students that they're talking about are socioeconomically disadvantaged, are emerging bilingual, basically your Title I student population, where it does cost more to educate those students than it does the general population. But there's nothing concrete yet as to who would be eligible for these monies. And again, we're talking about that money being available to spend at private schools and parochial schools. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not they make adjustments or amend House Bill 1 in a way that is palatable to the teachers union and to school superintendents across the state. My guess is that there are two things that would have to happen. One is that they'd want funding for the general ed population for their students to be equal to what they're doing for students who are getting the voucher. And two, we really believe that if you're going to get vouchers from the state, from taxpayers, then you should be required to take the same STAR test and EOC exams that our students take, so that when we're talking about efficacy, we're talking apples to apples and not, because, and Connie knows this, I think at parochial schools they have their own curriculum, their own test, and I suspect private schools may have the right to say we simply don't test.
The other thing that's different too is the fact that we don't run a special ed program.
Right.
We don't run, and to me, the kind of kids that they're talking about putting into, giving the money to for these schools could really not be served well at my school.
Right.
It really could not be served well because, I mean, we have people that have a lot of experience and a lot of training, but we have not hired anybody who has a specific degree in special ed or any of those things like that. So,
And then as it reads here, those students that received the vouchers, even when it sunsets, even when they're no longer available, they would continue to receive those vouchers until they're no longer eligible to be in a Texas public school, private school, or a parochial school. So that 50,000 students would always get the option of a voucher.
I have a question on the accountability for A to F. I know it's, you say that districts that received an A rating, keep it for those next coming years. Is that what you?
It just really depends on how you look at it. We say we keep it because we don't get rated.
Right.
So we hold on to the last rating that we received.
What about the other school districts that are on the lower end of the spectrum? I don't think they would like to keep that rating for those coming years.
Yeah, they wouldn't. We did, as part of the presentation to the community that we're doing, is we're trying to help impress upon them the importance of attendance as a key element to being an A-rated school district. Not because they measure attendance, but because our teachers have a chance to move the academic needle for kids when they're in attendance, and that isn't true when they're home. The second thing is, if you look at some of those school districts, and you can start with Austin, Aldina, Leaf, Brownsville, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, they're all members, Dallas, they're all members of this urban council that we belong to. Under the current formula, a majority of them would drop from their B's and C's to C's and D's, which isn't true of our district. So we've not been, and I think we talked about it, we didn't pursue that lawsuit because the lawsuit that they felt was intended to embarrass them so that parents would start insisting on school choice, vouchers, savings accounts, would not have had the same impact on the Ysleta Independent School District because we were still looking at our performance and we were on the cusp of an A or a B either way. More importantly, we would still be the highest performing school district in the El Paso region and among the urban council. They had a vested interest in it because it would, in some cases, Dallas certainly, Houston certainly, would become F-rated districts. Brownsville is a little bit more like we are. El Paso would be a C-rated school district. San Antonio would be an F-rated school district. So they had a lot to lose if the ratings came out in terms of their public's perception of their school district. Whereas we'd be disappointed to be a B, but a B would be, under the circumstances, strong performance across the state. You wouldn't see the number of A's under the current formula. So now, and it's part of the A to F discussion that Brenda's going to talk about, but there was a ruling this week relative to A to F accountability and applying this year's formula that would have that adverse and that detrimental impact on the majority of urban school districts. And a judge has ordered a stay or an injunction where TEA is not permitted to put ratings out this year until they go through the appeal process in February. Well, by February, there's really no point in putting out ratings. You've got 2.5 months left of school, 3 months left of school. So we suspect that they're trying to negotiate, include the ratings, include the additional dollars, include the 3 years suspension, because it may take 3 years for them to get through the court system anyway, but come up with at least an abbreviated voucher model that they can study over the next 2-3 years and then decide whether or not they go full tilt. The other thing that they could do politically would be that they pick those 50,000 students, and they're not the neediest students. They're the higher performing students, and then at the end of that 2-year period, they say, look how much better kids who went and used their voucher at a private school or a parochial school did relative to performance. So you don't know what the motive is behind the scenes, but there's something going on behind the scenes.
Quick question, Dr. De La Torre. Say we go through those 2 years without being rated. Do you foresee, say like other districts, finding their own accountability measurement? So that way when they come back and they say, well, we're an A-rated district.
Yeah, well, matter of fact,
Do you see something like that?
El Paso ISD, Superintendent Saavedra, as a rebuttal to the A to F accountability system. She doesn't believe in the A to F accountability system. She doesn't believe that the grades actually capture the good things that are going on in her district. She thinks that being strictly academically focused or being myopic about academic scores is not healthy. So she's proposing that the El Paso Independent School District develop their own accountability system using multiple measures. So yeah, the grades would be a part of it, but they'd also want to include this, and they'd want to include attendance and a lot of other elements, and then simply ignore the state accountability system. Problem is, the state accountability system has to exist for school districts to get federal funds. The federal government requires that a state have an accountability system, a recognized accountability system, before they release any money for Title I, Title II, and some of the other title programs, because those monies are intended to bring equity to those students who are at a disadvantage. So we get money for our Latino English learners, we get money for our special ed students, certainly not enough, but the only way they can determine who those students are is by looking at our accountability system, our demographics, the percentage of students in those categories, and then that determines how much money we get from the federal government. But El Paso ISD is the only one that I've heard that we're thinking about doing or developing their own accountability system.
And I can understand their dilemma in that. The rating system doesn't really look at the full picture. It only looks at a very narrow part of what the district is doing. But like you say, that's statewide, so it's going to go through the courts, that's for sure. So,
Yeah, when you think about your high school's performance, you have to reduce it down to this. They're going to take 5 assessments. They're going to take an English 1 assessment, an English 2 assessment, an algebra assessment, a history assessment, and a biology assessment. Based on those 5 assessments, that high school gets rated. So think about this if you're a teacher. If you're a 9th grade teacher, you're responsible for English 1 and algebra and biology. If you're in the 10th grade, you're not responsible. If you're in the 11th grade, you're responsible for the history score, right? And which one am I missing? Oh, English 2 was in the 10th grade as well. So you've already received 3 of your scores before the student is out of 9th grade. Then you receive the other 2 before the student is beyond 10th grade, and you have 1 final assessment in the 11th grade. No chemistry, no physics, no SAT, no ACT. Oh, yeah, for college, career, military readiness, those are all indicators.
does the CTE programs come into play?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because they're omitting a lot of those subjects of that. And I know that in my career as a teacher, sometimes we felt left out on some of the more support that we should have gotten because, and I know the focus is on those 5 areas that are measured, but sometimes we do a disservice to some of the other classes that should have some more support because of what physics, chemistry. Those are very important classes that when they go on to college, they're going to have to take a chemistry course, and certainly some part of physics. So, it's hard to balance the kind of support we give to our schools and everything because of how this thing is set up. So I just hope that we can reevaluate how we're supporting these programs. I'm sure we're doing okay in that area, but I would like to see more support in those other areas so they can, certainly if they're choose not to go to college, that they're ready to undertake any careers that they choose when they graduate, even going into the military. I mean, if we can prepare them for that and where they can score high enough, they can get a good military career that will certainly help them in the future.
Oh, and you guys have done, you've done a great job of that. This board has introduced 3 additional early college high schools at 3 comprehensive campuses. You approved and supported the Young Women's Leadership Academy. We just built a state-of-the-art career tech ed center at Riverside. Our ROTC programs are among the strongest in the city. So I think one of the things that we've always felt is that because parents have the option of open enrollment in this region, that in order to remain competitive, we had to provide access and opportunity to students, whether it be the fine arts, athletics, co-curricular, extracurricular programs, academic competitions, the Career Tech Ed Center, the Health Professions Academy. You have to provide it or students will leave your district for reasons other than where their parents have relocated as a result of a housing shortage, not the inventory that we wish we had to accommodate parents and families, but y'all have done a great job with all of these programs.
I keep talking, I'm sorry, I keep having something else to say. I want that to be also considered for our pre-K through 3rd grade students, or through 2nd grade students, because, that's where education starts. They're not tested. They're not, those things are not, but we need support in those areas too. I feel like that if you get the kind of support you need in pre-K and kindergarten, and I'm even talking about maybe some classroom aids and some things like that, you should have better results when you get to 3rd grade when you start testing. I really feel like that's an important area that people kind of look over. I think people kind of look at it as, oh, well, that's just the little kids, and they don't see the kind of influence that being in a good school can have on your academics. Just throwing that one out there.
Definitely the foundational years, and one of the things that we're excited about is we were one of the first districts to offer universal pre-K, and then second, we were one of the first districts to go full day pre-K. So we're expecting those students to be far better prepared when they get to kindergarten than the students that we had in the past, where you were, as a kindergarten teacher, that was the first time that child was in any kind of a formal classroom. Now the kids that these kindergarten teachers are getting, and they'll tell you, they're far better prepared. They've learned about classroom protocols, and that group, that cohort of kids that have been exposed to that full day pre-K, universal pre-K. By universal, it means we no longer worry about whether or not you qualify on the basis of income. We accept all of them. Should be felt as they come through and get closer to the middle school and high school. That should be one of the strategies that are going to help improve the outcomes significantly, just having had that full year of pre-K before entering kindergarten. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Our 3-year-old programs are also very healthy. We actually expanded them, and they're full. So, and all of our early ed classrooms do have instructional aids. So our pre-Ks, our 3-year-old programs, Actually, we have one of the strongest early ed programs, I would say, too. Our special ed collaborative units are also very well-staffed and highly trained. So we do have some of the best early ed programs. I will share with you that amongst the TUC districts, our third graders outperformed the entire TUC districts by, I think, 17 points in significant. I mean, I think it was 17 points in reading and 27 points in math. So if you remember, third grade, those were the babies that when COVID hit, similar to Dr. Luther was saying, were in kinder. It's very difficult to learn how to read online. And so for them to have that kind of performance, we're very proud of our teachers, but it's a testament to the work that they have pre-K3. They came back and they quickly recovered, and we still have a ways to go, but we did very, very well in comparison to the rest of the state in third grade.
I just wanted to completely agree with Trustee Woodruff and what she said. And my daughters are products of the pre-K program here in this district, and I've seen the positive effects that it's had on them and how they're doing now. The other thing I've been thinking about is Young Women's Leadership Academy. It's been mentioned, or it's been compared, or it's been said that this is our version of a charter school. It's kind of like the closest thing that we provide to students in this district. But it's also been brought up that the attendance there is going down. There's talks that we might not have a Young Women's Leadership Academy anymore. I'm wondering what options there are to expand the enrollment even to boys, maybe making it a co-ed experience, seeing what other options are there. My overall point is I think that we need to be prepared to adapt. I think this district has been very good at doing that. Everything that's been said, during this meeting and that I've seen, that's what this district does. I just want to say that we need to continue to do that, especially as we watch what's happening with this special session and these vouchers. And I hope that soon we can have a conversation about what options there are in us staying competitive. Because for the majority of parents, they aren't concerned about like, oh, we have to protect public schools or we have to protect, the district. Their concern is, I just want the best education for my children. And I think this district has been on a very good path of making that case that we are the best choice to bring education here. So I look forward to future conversations about what options there are on how we're going to adjust and stay competitive.
Agreed.
With even the private schools.
Agreed. And you're right, it is somewhat similar to a charter school in that there are enrollment requirements, good attendance, a strong background academically. Parents have to be willing to be very involved. And it's also part of a network of Young Women Leadership Academies throughout the state. So the only thing that might prevent us from considering co-ed there would be that the Young Women's Leadership Network of Texas would likely not support it and would withdraw their support. But it doesn't mean that we can't look at something like this for young men. To your point, we have to remain competitive by remaining innovative and always thinking and looking around the corner. So we're going to have that conversation a little later, because in about a year, 18 months, it will be time to go through an inclusive process again with our community to develop the third 5-year strategic action plan. And that's when the board gets to decide whether or not the goals we had originally in 2015 and then again in 2020 are still relevant going from 2025 for the next 5 years, because we no longer have bond capacity. So that's going to fall off of here, and it's going to give us a chance, the teachers, administrators, parents, and students to say what should be the pillars, the goals that we pursue aggressively for the next 5 years. And that's a perfect segue to start talking about new things, different things, higher benchmarks, higher targets, those type of things. And we're going to do a little bit about that later this morning. I'm going to turn it over
Let me
yes.
I have getting back to what Chris said, I can also attest that my three little grandkids have gone through the 4-year-old, the pre-K, and now they're in first grade. I am amazed at how much they have achieved in their learning capabilities, their math, their reading, their language, the words that they can speak and understand and communicate and comprehend at that level is just amazing. I've had all my children go through Ysleta schools, and as well as other grandkids, but these latest ones are really, really, I mean, they're my grandchildren. I say they're pretty sharp, but no, it's more than that. They've been getting good experience at our schools, and they certainly love to go to school. On the other part that Mr. Hernandez said, yes, we do have to be competitive, but I think looking at it from the big picture, Ysleta has been trying to be competitive, even though the Young Women's Leadership Academy right now is low attendance, but some of our schools are also low attendance, and that's not because we are not a great district. I mean, we are at an A district, but the thing is that we have to understand that in my area, the demographics have changed a lot. There's a lot of older generation people that live in these homes that don't have any more children. And for a young couple to buy a home that is already existing, that has been pre-owned, is more expensive, more paperwork. So where do they go? They go out to the Far East or somewhere where their new homes is available, right? That it's available. The loans are available for new homes a lot easier and everything else. So we've lost some of that. But we've provided early college. We provided that CTE programs. We have special programs like at Bel Air. We have the health program. What other schools do we have that have special programs?
So all,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, you got early colleges. We provide, I'm not an expert. I'll let her answer that.
No, go ahead.
But I mean, you just look at our district, you got early colleges, you got CTE programs, you got an array of things
What do
that
we
our kids
have
can
in
pick.
the other high schools?
Well, you have the pre-engineering.
Pre-engineering,
program at
STEMs.
the Middle school in Parkland.
And that in itself, I think, has really attracted a lot of our students to come to Ysleta. We have that capability to do that. I know some of our smaller districts are a little bit, can't do that, but we can. So I agree that we should look at this again in the coming year where we have to do a strategic plan. But even at that time, I think everything will change again. And things change so much from year to year that it's amazing, you know.
And in all fairness to the Young Women's Leadership Academy, they had those two classes that were somewhat anemic. I think there's a group of seniors that will graduate this year. I think, 24 of them? Correct. 24 of them, but when we brought it, and I think Catherine initiated the conversation, when we brought it to the attention of the principal that we cannot operate and invest that kind of money to see 24 girls complete the program and graduate. She understood, she went out, and I believe her ninth grade, or her new sixth grade class is almost 100 girls again. So as long as she can keep bringing in 100 girls, we'll keep supporting that school, because economically it makes sense as long as you have close to 100 girls and you're having graduating classes of 50, 45, significant number. The same thing can be said to the early college high schools. The pandemic had the effect of reducing significantly the number of kids that were graduating with an Associate of Arts degree. And those programs also cost a little bit of extra money, but they're not intended for kids just to go over to Valle Verde or be in an early college high school, in the end of that experience, walk away with just a high school diploma. The purpose is an Associate of Arts and a high school diploma, because I think economically it helps our community significantly. when someone's child gets the first 2 years of college paid for, tuition, books, now we're seeing more and more students finishing their Associate of Arts degree at the end of their junior year, and we've agreed to pay for their junior year at UTEP. That kind of impact on a family's wallet is significant, and that is attractive to parents. So when our programs run as they were intended to, outside the pandemic experience, they're very attractive, and they prepare students for life after high school.
The other thing that happened with the Young Women's Leadership Academy is the fact that two of the schools in, well, three, if you want to count all three of them, in the Bel Air learning community were being closed because they had low enrollment and combined with other schools. But then you have the Young Women's Leadership Academy sitting up on the hill, and the constituents were, no way. Why are you doing, you're going to close our schools, the schools that are in our neighborhoods with actually the same or even a little more enrollment than you had at Young Women's, and the outcry was there. It was there. So just saying that to say that it wasn't unrealistic of us or bad of us to go ahead and make these requirements to fit the Young Women's Leadership Academy because of the money that we do spend there and the outcry of constituency.
And I understand that. I mean, I'm not, I can see it, that the numbers are not there. But I'm also would be interested in see where they stand academically compared to the other,
Well, and that's another good point, because at their last signing ceremony, I'm just making a guesstimate, I'm not a mathematician, but it was over 50% of the kids, I think it was closer to 60 or 70% of the girls graduating from that school were going to UTEP. They didn't have, and to me, that experience needs to be a more where you're out there type of experience. And I'm not criticizing. I think that was great. We're very happy. I'm glad that they're doing well. But I still think that we need to keep our accountability high for that school so that we can, that we can go out, like Mr. Ochoa is saying, and say, yes, look what our Young Women's Leadership Academy is producing. Young adults that are going to schools even outside of town, and all of those things. I'm talking about getting scholarships to those places. They had a lot of scholarship money, but I think it was at least 60 to 70% of the girls stayed at UTEP. And most of them, a lot of them, that was the scholarship that they got. It wasn't that they didn't have they didn't have that many other offers. Your top girls there, oh gosh, they had offers to everywhere. But the majority of those girls.
well, I think most of our high schools have the top 2%. You get scholarships offered from all around the country, So it kind of runs the same levels as the other students.
Yeah, but the point is that school is not meant to run at the same levels as the other schools.
I agree.
But
And
in all
so
defense,
that's just, I'm not criticizing Young Women's. I think they do a fabulous job. I love what I see when I get to go to that school. They do lots of cool things there. It's
Connie,
really good.
I got my engineering degree at UTEP.
Yeah, and that's fine too. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that when you are offering these kinds of programs, you expect to see more of those girls going to more.
That goes along with
prestigious
who's ever
places.
providing those scholarship opportunities at that school. Because if you notice that Ysleta has a high number of students that get a lot of scholarship money. And it doesn't run the same, it's not the same
No.
for all the other high schools.
No, I can say I'm
So
quite
it has to do
frequently
a lot with,
disappointed at what I get at Bel Air
the mechanics that is working in those schools. And we brought it up before that. I think you guys are doing great. Ysleta is always number one on the scholarship programs, and they have always offered a lot of opportunities. But somewhere there's a little bit of a disconnect that we could also address later.
One of the things then I'll recommend is that we have a YISD presentation annually, so that they come before the board maybe in like November or January. They talk about how many students in each of the grade levels. They talk about grade point averages. They talk about their scholarship. They basically treat you like a board of directors for a company that gets to decide whether or not you keep making the investment, you make an adjustment to the program, to Chris's point. But they report to you, and they come in and they tell you what's good, what's great, and then we decide whether or not there's some areas that cause concern.
Dr. De La Torre, do we have the numbers from elementary to middle school to high school? What is our enrollment for that school?
At YISD? The numbers are usually really good in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then what happens in 8th grade, it becomes very difficult. In some cases, two things happen. One, to convince the girls not to want to go to a comprehensive high school with Friday night football and the prom and homecoming and boys. And then the second is too many of the parents that made commitments to that school kind of give in to their daughter. And I think they understand that they've already reaped the biggest benefit of that, and that is a very solid foundation to do well anywhere they go. They've in some way insulated their daughter from some of the growing pains that happen in that age group of middle school and some of the crazy things that happen in middle school. So they lose a very high percent of girls to a variety of comprehensive high schools in the area. And we've not been able to figure out how we can keep them. At one time, we thought that if we could establish a foundation that would raise money so that they'd have like a senior trip to Europe as a sort of the here's why you want to stay, that might be a way to keep the girls. So like maybe at the end of the 8th grade, they go to Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian. They get to sit in on a legislative session. And then at the end of their sophomore year, they take a trip and go on a college visit trip, which they do now, but it's relatively limited to either Texas or they go up to ASU, University of Arizona, UCLA, some of the Southern California schools, and then they come back. But the foundation that supports some of the other young women's leadership academies, mostly in Austin, Houston, and Dallas, they have large corporations and businesses that can generate the kind of money to give to the school. In El Paso, you're competing against everybody to get, Foster, Hunt, Baines, Castro. It's like the same people being asked all the time, and they've been unable to create the foundation. By the way, the foundation is the responsibility of that network I was talking about. It wasn't supposed to be our responsibility to develop it. They were going to develop it on our behalf.
I'm sorry, but I'm also at fault for this. We're off topic, and we need to get back to the agenda. We don't have our special counsel here today, but she advised me to keep us on track. So, okay. Let's proceed.
Good morning, Trustee Woodruff and members of the board. So I have an update on House Bill 3. As you may recall, during the summer, we brought, somebody else helping me? We brought forth the plan, and it's approved by the board for effectively a hybrid model, utilizing our existing security staff and helping them become qualified to act as armed defenders. House Bill 3 requires that an armed defender be present on every campus during regular school hours, and the plan that we adopted called for 3 armed and 2 unarmed at every high school, 2 and 2, if you will, at every middle school, and 1 at every elementary. In the past, we have primarily staffed high schools with significant numbers of security officers while having 1 or 2 available at a middle school, and then a rover effectively that would respond, and usually it was the high school security officer that would respond at an elementary school if we needed them there. Under the plan that you approved, we would have an armed defender at every single campus. Now, as you may recall, that was a big challenge because many of the standard models across the state called for a police force or called for utilizing police officers. El Paso has a huge shortage of officers. They're down, the last count in August, I think they told us was 1,000 officers. They've authorized numerous police academies and they can't fill them. So we knew right away that will never work. We had a hard time just getting SROs to be able to staff our particular schedule. So with your approval, we've moved forward with this plan, and
But what's ACAC?
this building.
Oh.
Sorry about that. The Administrative and Cultural Arts Center.
Oh, okay. This armed officer sergeant, he won't be in the office.
So there is a sergeant for each learning community.
But, I mean, he's going to be visible.
Yes, we have one sergeant that works here, and they are visible. We call them, they walk throughout the building. And then you have dispatch, and those are just security officers watching. But there's a sergeant.
But this officer, because I've hardly ever see anybody walking around.
As I mentioned, we are short-staffed still.
Oh, it's not
because
here yet.
We have him, but we'll deploy him out to campuses when we're short. So if someone from the police department didn't make it to work, which happens, then we will send our sergeant out because we want them where the students are. Okay, but the plan is, and we should be able to accomplish it, that there will be a full-time sergeant here.
Just as a precaution, what kind of security do we have right now here, sitting here with you?
Sitting here at this office, there's officers in dispatch.
They monitor who comes in and who comes out.
Mhm.
Okay.
Good?
Yes.
Okay. And then, since we're talking about the sergeants, there are sergeants who oversee each learning community, and they act as rovers. So they are responsible for the entire feeder pattern, the 3-armed, the 2-armed at high schools, the 2 and 2 at the middle schools. And so, in addition to that armed defender on campus, you have a sergeant who is in excess of those and oversees the operation in the learning community.
Will these sergeants be moved around? Or will they stay at one learning community for the
Generally,
duration?
they'll stay at each learning community, but occasionally, much like other staff, if there's a conflict, if there's a reason we feel like they don't particularly express the attitude, the culture of that learning community, then we may move them.
Okay.
But generally, they fit in and develop a relationship and a rapport with the campuses they serve, and we don't want to
And
disrupt
that's
that.
very important, That's very important, I think, that they establish those relationships with those, especially, well, all schools, that they
Yes,
have
sir.
the trust and the visibility that even the parents can see them and understand that they're there
Yes, sir.
for a reason.
I agree with Mr. Ochoa. I think having our securities, knowing their community is huge. You need to know who's and where, who are the players.
Especially in emergencies, because
Absolutely.
they already know the area and they know pretty much how every school is laid out and personnel there as well.
Yes, sir. So in the process of equipping these armed defenders, we also have to provide equipment. And as you know, we've experienced significant labor and material shortages. So we have currently ordered vests for every single officer who will be required to wear it while in the field. Now the exception will be the people that are staffed in dispatch because they're not engaging with the public and not exposed to potential danger necessarily. The frangible ammunition, I think of this as ammunition that upon impact disrupts, it shatters, because you don't want a weapon to be fired and the ammunition to spray or to go through sheetrock or to go
Bounce off.
through a wall. So frangible, if you will, just dissolves on impact. So it won't be splattered, it won't go through walls, and that's a requirement for all of our officers. They will have to carry frangible ammunition. And then additionally, we have the 411 training that has to take place. I will tell you frankly, the Department of Public Safety is still working on it. They are actually finishing the train the trainer 411 for the DPS this month. and then we will be able to deploy it. So we're actually ahead of the state in terms of the training that they need to provide to these armed offenders across the state.
How about psychological evaluations?
I'm getting there. So the next slide, we talk
Oh.
about some of these miscellaneous things that we have incorporated pursuant to your authorization for anyone that we're going to arm. And of course, right off the top is the psychological evaluation. As you can imagine, if you're going to test and put people through a rigorous psychological evaluation, and it is indeed rigorous, it incorporated a test of, I think there were about 10 pages of multiple choice questions. And each of these officers has to report on a Saturday, and they go through the test screening, if you will. And then they're required to meet with the licensed psychologist to actually have an interview to discuss their answers, to meet with them, to engage with them, to see are they suitable and will they be able to perform their job responsibilities with the standard that we would want. And we actually went out to bid for a licensed psychologist. We utilized several, we looked at several, those that supply this service to the police department, to the sheriff's department, to the county, to the city, if you will, and determined which one we thought would best serve our needs, and then engaged them, and they've started this testing. I'm pleased to say that all of the sergeants, those particularly that we want assigned to specific learning communities and are already assigned there, they've already passed the psychological evaluation. They've come back clean, and so those are done. We actually, well, let me finish this. We'll talk a little bit about this, and then I'll go more into the other. The level 3 officers, they'll never be able to carry their weapons off campus. So where you might see a police officer, an El Paso police officer out in public with their weapon, you will never see our armed defenders out in public with their weapon exposed. Now, they might be a concealed carrier and they might be able to carry otherwise, but you would not see that or know about it. These officers will take their weapons home. They must secure them. We've provided many of these supplies for them. They have a gun cleaning kit. All the things that are necessary they will have because we will provide it. Okay, so our goal originally was to have all of this in place by December. I can tell you that because of the weapon shortage, material shortage, the length of time it takes to get officers through the psychological evaluation, we believe that when we return to school in January, we should have an armed defender at every single campus. The 8 sergeants, 20 officers have already been through it. We still have 35 more officers scheduled for evaluation. Again, they do this every Saturday, and then they have the interviews across the time. Yes, ma'am.
So how are the schools handling this in the interim?
So we're still
time?
using our SROs from the police department and our existing security guards. So it's still fully staffed. I just can't say that every one of the armed personnel are on site. But generally speaking, we are arming at the secondary level first because that's where we experience the most risk. And then they are serving the elementary campuses like 3. One will serve 3 or 4, something like that. So when they come back in January, we should be covered. 8 sergeants, 20 officers already done with psych evaluations, 35 more still to go. And then with regard to the level 3 certification, and so there's level 3 certification and there's a 411 training by the DPS. We only have 4 officers pending that level 3 certification. So we are well on our way. Yes, ma'am.
One more question. Why doesn't that qualify? Because it sounds like we have basically our own force. So why doesn't it qualify for that?
It effectively does. We're just calling it armed defender. So when you have a police force, it is governed by TCOL, it's affiliated with TCOL, and we do technically have a police force, but we only have 2 officers that are licensed under that police force. That's Officer or Chief Holguin now and Officer Castaneda. Okay? All right, let's see, is there any more to that? Okay. This has cut the slide off a little bit, but in addition to the armed defender piece, we have facility standards that must be implemented, and these all have to be in place by August of 2024. So secure entry vestibules, you see those across the district. We're way ahead of this curve. We already had them in place. We're doing some tweaking to them, if you will, putting a divider between the exit and the entry, and putting a speaker at the algo so there's an algo outside, but inside there often is a service window, and that service window doesn't necessarily have speakers. We're upgrading those speakers. We are making it possible for the person who sits inside, so say Miss Monica is the one scanning licenses to make sure that you're allowed on campus, that your background check is clear, you're not a sex offender that we're letting onto campus. She doesn't now have to let you in to scan your driver's license from where she sits in the safety of her office. She's able to scan your license. You insert it and she can see the result.
Nice.
So that keeps them outside the campus until we've cleared them by their driver's license scan. The Knox boxes, those are also required. If you're not familiar with what a Knox box is, at the exterior of every school in multiple locations is a secure box that only the fire department has the key to. And typically, and actually by statute, right now, only the fire department has access to a Knox box. We have already started the discussions with the police department because this statute says the police department must also have access through a Knox box. Well, if fire's the only one that has the key to get in the Knox box, you have to figure out a way to get police to do it or get police to have access. Unfortunately, firemen serve at a house, right, at a firehouse, and they have a key per house. And so a 12-hour shift that runs for 3 days straight, they immediately go and open the box. However, for police, you have 15 different cars serving a particular region. And so you can't give a key to every single patrol car that serves that region. So they have already committed, and they understand the statute. They're developing their own SOP, standard operating procedure, where they will call fire and police anytime there's a threat, and both will arrive, fire to unlock the Knox box and police to have access. So that's a huge deal. They have never before coordinated. They have their own separate procedures, and they don't typically coordinate. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? And on every truck for the fire department. But think about the number of fire trucks versus the number of police cars. Yes. So we won't tell Chief Pasillas that. But yes, and so trying to provide a key for every car would be problematic for the police department. And because they have officers that use, multiple officers using the same car, they just said it won't work for us, so we're going to have to work in tandem with the fire department to make this work. Huge change, because those boxes, there are probably 7 at Eastwood. They're about $700 a piece. So if you start thinking about the number that we would have to put at every campus to make it possible, and if I had to duplicate it so police and fire each had one, crazy numbers for crazy expense dollars. Exterior door numbering, we're way ahead of this. Our exterior doors are already all numbered according to the code or according to the statute. The SPAT, or silent panic alert technology, we are compliant for our employees, or will be completely compliant by end of November. First responders, that's a challenge for us. And what they're talking about here is that first responders must be able to communicate by radio when they're in any campus. If you think about communications near the border, sometimes that's a challenge, or when you're in the depths of a gymnasium underneath where it's all cinder block wall. So that's something that we're working on with first responders, both police and fire, to ensure we comply with the law. Entry resistant film, you'll hear this sometimes referred to as ballistic film or bulletproof film. I want to caution you again, it's neither. It's not ballistic and it's not bulletproof. There's no such thing. It is entry resistant. The goal of entry resistant film is to delay an intruder by at least 5 minutes, because typical response times are 3 to 5 minutes. Perimeter fencing, we already are a long way towards this. I believe that started under Dr. De La Torre and the first bond initiative in 2015. We have almost accomplished the entire perimeter fencing plan that was implemented at that time. The last bullet refers to window film, vestibule graphics, and interior windows. None of these are safety standards, but we get a lot of requests to make my vestibule invisible, opaque, so no one can see in it. I'm going to tell you frankly, because of the dollars that we have to spend on all these other requirements that are essentially unfunded at this point, we are limiting the amount of film that campuses can use on the interior of any building, because I need to focus on the exterior. We should never have anyone inside the campus that doesn't belong there. So I need to secure and harden the outside perimeter. I'm not as focused on covering those classroom windows or those collaborative spaces. That's not the focus of the safety initiative, according to the state and according to our own district practices. So I believe that's it, but let me check. Yes, it is. Any questions, additional questions? No? All right, thank you so much, Dr. De La Torre.
Thank you. I think at this time, before we go on this, could we take a little break? Yeah. 5-minute break? Okay.
playing right now, but then she's got one at 10. So I'm sure you'd like to make one.
Okay.
Definitely. We're almost to the end, actually, believe it or not.
All right. Let's reconvene, and our next item at the topic is strategic action plan.
Yeah, just wanted to sort of introduce, especially our new board members, but just remind the board that in 2020, we developed this instrument, and as I mentioned earlier, we're probably 18 months away from starting the process again. And what we do is we bring together, in an inclusive process, we bring together students, parent groups, the trustees, have a workshop on it, or multiple workshops on it. And we develop the strategic action plan that is the blueprint for what's supposed to happen in the district over the next 5-year period. And it's a pretty specific document because this document drives the work we do, and it also drives, in many ways, the budget. There's an old saying that if you want to know what's important to an organization, follow the money, right? And anytime that we make, that we amend or modify or introduce something into the annual budget, it has to marry, be consistent with what the board adopted in 2019-20. And it goes through a very specific outline of how we plan to, for example, your first goal is called Our Future. Anything under the subtitle Our Future is what we do to directly impact the experience our students have in our schools, but specifically the academic experience they have in our schools. And so goal 1 speaks to students and their experience, and we have a balanced literacy framework. That's how we address literacy. We have dual language programs at every one of our schools. When you have dual language programs, your investment is in the form of teachers who have dual language certificates, which is a district-wide initiative. We have an Engage Me Technology initiative that we introduced, that we launched back in 2020. Best Reading Writing Practices initiative. Best Mathematics Practices initiative. And below each one of these, you can see that there's a specific action plan. This is how we address math in the district. This is how we address reading and writing in the district. And you can go through and you can see all of the things that we developed and how we thought we would address them in a way that that results in the outcomes that the board expects. And those outcomes are laid out as targets, and I'll show you those in a minute. When you go to goal 2, that's Bobby's world in many ways. It's our people, our employees. And it's about employee morale. It's about employee benefits. It's what drives how we compensate our employees. It speaks to employee complaints, concerns, how we address those. Our commitment to being fair, transparent, equity, all of those things. And then it goes through and it kind of describes how we measure an employee satisfaction. And again, this is all entirely up to the board, but at present, you all know that we send out these neutral third-party surveys every year to the employees. And the employees assess how they believe that their principal, assistant principal, leadership team treats them, supports them, communicates with them, is their school environment hostile-free, those type of things. And they fill out this extensive survey, and the board has said, out of a 5-point Likert-like scale, your expectation is that that employee satisfaction never dips below 4.0. And it never has. It's been 4.05. At one time, I think it was even 4.3. But that's their way of letting us know whether or not they think that they work in a healthy environment at their respective campus. A second survey goes out to all the principals at all the schools. And they get to assess how they believe we here at the district office treat them, support them. Do we communicate consistently with them? Do they feel like we're responsive, approachable, available? And then we get assessed by title: superintendent's office, chief human resource officer, talent officer, talent management officer. I could just, and everyone specifically gets a rating. I get my rating, Bobby gets hers, Brenda gets hers, Mario Rodriguez gets his, but everybody tells us whether or not the central office that we believe is designed to support them is making it possible for them to be successful. Then the big one is the third, and that goes out to the parents. And the parents basically assess whether or not they believe that the experience their child is having in their school and in our district is positive or negative. And again, in all these cases, they cannot dip below 4.0 on the 5-point Likert-like scale. And it's gotten to the point where people feel very comfortable being very candid, very honest with the things they like and the things that they don't like. And then you as a board get a copy of this survey, and at the back of the survey, aside from the points, you get to read their respective comments that they make. And those comments then become something that you can bring to the attention of the district office if we don't bring it to our own attention. And then the third part is really important, and that is our resources, how we handle our taxpayers' money, how we spend, where we spend. Do we have a healthy fund balance? Do we have a healthy reserve? Did we do what we promised our community we would do? And that was all bond projects on time, on budget, the quality that our students, employees need and deserve. And then number 4 was a real important one for the community, and that is, if all things are equal, are you employing local labor, or are you, like some of the neighboring districts, hiring architects and engineers from Arizona, California, Louisiana, construction companies from out of state, subcontractors from out of state? Why would you do that if you have plenty of them here? And our goal has always been, let's keep the El Paso dollar in El Paso. Let's make sure that when we're spending these bond monies, they're part of the compensation that all of these employees that live and work in El Paso use to pay their mortgage, their car payment, their rent, their groceries, so that it improves the economy here in El Paso and not in Phoenix or Scottsdale, Arizona, or in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then we also felt like that was a way to keep our local contractors and subcontractors accountable. And they live here, they're responsible for delivering, and they've done that now for 2 bonds, over $1 billion in improvements in this school district, and we are probably less than a year away from being completely done. And so y'all have executed and you've delivered in about an 8-year period what the El Paso Independent School District has been unable to do with 1 bond in those same 8 years. And so that was part of this strategic action plan. But obviously, when we sit down and start thinking about what we want for our kids academically, what we want for our employees, and the kind of culture and climate we want in our schools, and ultimately, we still want to be very responsible when it comes to our finances and where we spend and how we spend money. But what won't be there is an additional $1 billion budget that Lindley's having to manage concurrent with managing our operating budget and making sure that your policy, which I believe requires that we have at least how many days of operating cost? At least 60 days of operating cost in the reserve, which means that if we didn't receive a dime from the state tomorrow, and we had to rely strictly on our reserve, we could run the district for 60 days with the money that we have set aside. And we try not to ever touch that money. So then, from this document,
Can I?
yes, absolutely.
Looking at the third goal, I think, for us, how will we know we have accomplished board goal number 3, which is our investment? Looking through what we had targeted way back when, it was 2025, when we first started this, and back in 2019, 2020. If you look down on the right-hand column, everything pretty much has been completed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So what you're seeing here is the targets by year, and so some of those are 2024,
Well,
right? So our
but,
target is a yes.
Yeah, but the outlier was the 2025, and we're in 2023, and they've all been completed under budget, and
Yes, you still have some life cycle renovations and some other HVAC conversions that won't be complete until next year.
oh, so the 6 or the 4 doesn't mean that they've been completed?
No, so if you see, the far right column says the 2025 target, that there were under 3.6, let's do 3.7.
Oh,
no.
okay.
3.8, complete those new buildings on time per budget. All of those are done, and we're ahead. But let's go to 3.
3.6.
Thank you, sir. Under 3.13, you can see those are complete 6 life cycle projects by 2024 on time and under budget. So there are 6 of those that still need to be done and will be done next year. The target is to have a yes, but it's
Okay.
not a yes yet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think this is something that we have to provide to the public and our communities as to how well this has been going on, that we're going to be finished ahead of time.
Yes, sir,
way
we
ahead
are.
of time. So I think we should put that somewhere in our webpage or something like that, so we can really address this as to make them feel assured that we have taken care of this investments and that has been completed, or will be completed here in the next few years, in the next year.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. So this is something for you to review as you start thinking about, okay, when we get to the process, I happen to think that the safety and security of our students is a goal that isn't currently highlighted in here that we'd like to see as part of a priority, or anything else that then can become the framework for the next 5 years from 2025 all the way to 2030, and it's amazing how quickly that goes. The 2 things that I want to bring to your attention at the end of the first goal are future. At the very end, you're going to find what's called a scorecard. When you look at the scorecard, it looks like this. And this is sort of a line item, and Brenda's going to pass out one that you can look at, of not only what you expect to see accomplished in that 5-year period, but when appropriate, the actual percentage or the actual score you expect us to achieve. So if you look at like 1.02, increase the percent of English learner students meeting grade level in English language arts reading on the STAR exam. In 2019, it was at 26%. You said by 2025, that 26% has to be at minimum 30%. So part A is, I'm reading the wrong,
It's the same one.
the same one?
Here it shows in what we currently are, so we've met a lot of those targets.
So you can see where the Y is at. Those are targets that were supposed to be met by 2025 that have already been met, and we're in 2023, 24. The green shows you those areas where we've experienced improvement, growth, and how much growth. The red will show you where we've either not experienced any growth, and in some case, the score has gone down, 1.3, 1.8 in those categories. And if you look at it just very quickly, one of the things that we're obviously very concerned about is graduation rates. So the graduation rate, we want at 93, and we're at 88 for a 4-year, we won 93, and we're at 92.7 for a 5-year graduate. So we have work to do in the area of graduation. In the area of college readiness, again, the target is 93. 93.5, we've met it, but we have to keep an eye on that because it went down 0.6, even though we're still above it. The other was 60, we've met it. It's 69.9, but at one time it was 73.9. We have to figure out why it went the wrong direction. And the math, 40%, is it currently at 58%, but was at 60.5%, so it's headed the wrong direction. So this is what we use, and this is also what principals at all of their respective schools use for their school. So their numbers are different because every school started in a different place. And so it will be reflective of their goals, their targets, and the rule is that I can't achieve this if they're not achieving theirs at their schools. So we call it a cascading model. Our success, your success, my success in the eyes of our community is really driven down to the grassroots. It's how successful are principals being at their schools using the using the exact same scorecard reflective of their circumstances. Then that same scorecard lands right on my lap. And every January, goal 1, it'll look like this. There is all of the same scorecard indicators. I know most of you are very familiar with this. And you either did or you didn't. It's very objective. It happened, it didn't happen. When it doesn't happen, it's very clear. And this, by the way, is up on all these boards so that the public can see what is happening, what isn't happening relative to the district and ultimately to the superintendent's performance. Those are the surveys. So one of the things that, and we present on this evaluation system at a lot of conferences, is that it's almost preloaded before you get to the evaluation meeting because the test scores are in, the test scores are recorded, they're introduced into the instrument, and it either happened or didn't happen. And then at the back part of the evaluation instrument, there are 13 competencies, and that speaks to things that that you get to kind of approach as an open-ended question. Principles and values, and it gives you examples of what they'd like you as a board member to reflect on and comment on. Vision, communication, climate, operations, community relations, leading, teaching, and learning. So these are all open-ended, and what typically happens is we give you the template, and in the privacy of your own home, you can sit and you can type up, and then they're collected in the aggregate and made available the night of the evaluation so that everybody gets a chance to determine whether or not that area, they're comfortable with performance of the superintendent in that area, they're not comfortable. They give examples of incidents or events that they either liked a lot or didn't like, and then ultimately it becomes the superintendent's evaluation. And that's the last week in January. And then to your point, and your point, Mr. Ochoa, this is the annual report that we disseminate to our community to capture what has happened in that year. And I would recommend that when you get a chance just to go through and read it, get to know a lot of it by memory, because I think it's a really, really healthy tool when one of your community members, or you happen to be at a neighborhood association meeting or something, and they want you to talk about something, and so you can go directly here. I've worked closely with a number of you. Connie and I work closely on community meetings. I'm always available if you want me to come to a neighborhood meeting. But we find information here, and to Mr. Ochoa's point, toward the back, all the bond We promised, we delivered. We have beautiful photographs of the new schools, the new buildings, the type of thing that we can easily turn into a PowerPoint presentation for you at a neighborhood association meeting. For me, at a community forum. We've started those. We've been out to Bel Air. We've been out to Hanks. On Monday, I'll be at Eastwood, and on Wednesday, I'll be at Del Valle, the day after Halloween, and then the following week, I'll finish with Riverside, Parkland, and Parkland's my last one, and Ysleta High School. And you guys are obviously more than welcome. I go through just a brief presentation, and then it's important that I introduce you so that your community knows who to come to. If they have any questions, comments, concerns, sometimes they'll catch you before you leave and give you an earful. And then we serve at your pleasure to bring it to us and to address it if you feel like it needs to be addressed. But anything we can provide you in addition to these documents, we're prepared to do, because this time of year goes by so quickly. Right now it's going to go like this. It's going to go Halloween, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and before you know it, we'll be sitting in front of one another in 2024.
All right, well, thank you. I think it's provided us a lot of information that we've known about throughout the year, but bringing it to this meeting and putting it in front of it, especially our new members, I think it's very important that, to remember what our goals were way back when, and now we're really moving on with that. But like I've always said, we always can improve and get better. So let us not rest on our laurels that we've been A-rated. I just want us, whatever happens, that's politics. But I know that we are always going to do our best for our kids, because Chris has an investment, I have an investment, Charlie has an investment, Shane has an investment. Yeah, you do. Grandkids, we all have an investment. So it's not just because we're sitting on the board, it's because it's also personal. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to come out here on Saturday morning. I don't know who called it at 8 o'clock in the morning, but that's okay. We have the rest of the day available to us now, if there's any other questions. If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjourn.